Hey guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing.
Very unfortunate that I can't keep filming from there. His bed is very comfortable. We just got it for his birthday, which was recently. I don't know why I'm addressing him. I'm aware that you're here, but I'm talking to him at the moment. He was really suspicious of it, so initially, Mr. Blake and I had to sleep in this bed with him, like not all night or anything, but to just show him that that's what it's not like he doesn't have, he has another bed. Mr. Blake was very insistent that he should have like many beds. So now he's got this like orthopedic, much too large dog bed. Like it's much bigger than it needs to be, but Mr. Blake wanted to spoil him, and that's what's happening. So anyway, what else is new in my life except for me spending time in my dog's bed with him? I mean, that is mainly it. But also, La Petite More has come out. It is now available. I'm very excited to see what you guys think. I am drinking this Life in the Morning tea. So it's been a little bit of a tough week for me for a lot of reasons that I don't really want to get into, but it's been a little bit rough. So I'm actually going to answer a couple of questions that have been asked that were about two people's academic papers. So I ended up writing responses, and now we're going to chat about them a little bit more because I have the time, and that's what we're doing today. Oh, this is what I was going to say. So I did a call for the Advent prompts. Thank you to those of you who submitted them. It's actually been very funny to me because I can see very clearly who is really familiar with my stuff and knows what kind of thing I like to write. Because there's been a lot of suggestions where I'm like, oh my god, that's genius. I'm going to have so much fun with that. I have exceeded 24 prompts. So I'm actually, at this point, I'm still accepting them, but it is more likely that your prompt will be either mixed with somebody else's prompt. I did have someone ask for a Gossip Girl AU, and then someone else brought up a scene from Gossip Girl, and I was like, okay, mixing these two together, that'll be easy. I don't want to give them all away. I will say they're probably about half Hermione, and then the other half are a mix of pairings. The next largest pairing is definitely Theo and Harry, and then Pansy and Percy will probably have a couple. And then there'll be a couple of rare pairs sprinkled in as well. There's one I woke up to an idea for one I'm really excited about. Someone asked for mythology combined with one particular pairing, and I came up with an idea I really like. So I'll probably start writing these very soon. But anyway, you're welcome to keep sending me prompts. There's some that I'm not fully in love with or I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, where someone just asked for a minor pairing or something, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll write that, but I don't know what I'm going to write yet. So feel free to keep sending them, but definitely keep in mind that your prompt may be mixed in with somebody else's prompt. Hopefully that's fine. I'm going to try to do as many as possible. This really is my way to thank you for being here this whole year, and for many years. For a lot of you have been here for a long time. So I just felt like the best thing I could give you for Christmas or whatever holiday you're celebrating this December, try to give you a story that you want. So we have an English paper in which we can write about any academic topic, and I was thinking of writing mine on expecting more from our female characters, I guess mostly in terms of a personality. That makes sense. Especially in young adult novels, since that's what most people my age read. Plus, I was thinking of somehow including the not like other girls thing when it's brought to life in the form of a character. Anyway, do you have any thoughts and suggestions on this? So the not like other girls, that's a concept I'm sure you've heard from someone other than me, many people in addition to me, but I initially brought that up in terms of our conversation about Jane Eyre. The not like other girls in modern usage tends to be more along the lines of, she's not like other girls because she's into sports, or she doesn't care what she eats, or she doesn't care what she looks like. So basically, the not like other girls is a girl with male attributes. But of course she's beautiful. That's very important. She needs to be beautiful. Anyway, so that's an extra spiel. I talked about the fallacy of scarcity, which is something I talked about before, which is in the workplace kind of this idea that women are constantly competing against each other for a few spots. So there's this idea that there's only a few things and all the women have to fight over them. And this extends to the concept of romance, that there are only a few good men and therefore women are all competition. That can be a really damaging attitude. I've talked before about the workplace. It's damaging because the idea that we keep other women down in order to be the woman that succeeds is really quite self-destructive. The way that we police ourselves to continue with that fallacy, to keep that fallacy real, is very problematic. And I think it's problematic in romances as well. It's not like romance is about possessing some list of qualities. You don't win someone by being the better woman. That's kind of an attitude I want to get away from. This idea that's permeated, especially in romances, that a woman wins the object of her affection because she's different from the women around her is damaging, because it's viewed through the lens that all these women are her competition, or that they are somehow worse women than she is, or that there is a way to be a better or worse woman. And then also because that's just not how love works. You don't win somebody's love, and you certainly don't do it by possessing some list of attributes. The Not Like Other Girls perpetuates this idea that the best kind of woman isn't like a woman at all. I mean, this is a little bit of an extrapolation, but this is basically what this encourages. The more that women differentiate themselves from each other and insist that they're not like other women, that we might all have these similar experiences and we might all have these very similar problems, but that we don't, we would rather isolate ourselves, is really a terrible way to go about it. And so one thing I said was that the entire romance genre is built on this idea that someday a man will come along and rescue us. And it's still that same idea. And it's not that he's trying to rescue us from a tower or a dragon, but now he's rescuing us from loneliness or from desire. That we all want this man who knows exactly what we want, and that this man somehow exists, and we win him by being different from other women. So I don't want to harp on the same point, but if you really think about what that is doing to us as a gender, it's a little problematic. I was talking to Aurora recently about basically who writes the best women. And we weren't talking about necessarily authors. It was more a conversation of which genres are best at portraying women as they really are. And we kind of came around to this idea that the books that do it the best are not based on author or by genre, but it's based on basically how many other women are in the story. So part of the problem with the Not Like Other Girls is she's the only girl in the story. The other women in the story are usually, maybe there's an older female mentor or there's a best friend, but usually the other women are the villains in the story in some way, which isolates her, and then she's the only woman. But we talked about the books that really portray the female experience in full are the stories that feature fuller female casts, multiple women. The question of honoring our female characters by expecting more, I think what we really need to do is expect less. We don't want one woman who's a strong woman. I think the idea of a strong female character is the wrong direction for publishing to go. I think what we want is stronger female casts, more types of women. Sort of, we want to expect more by expecting less. So you want that woman to be able to grow, to be able to have emotions and experiences that are similar to real women, not because we're trying to provide diversity, but because we're portraying the world as it actually is, that women are sharing a female experience, that we are like other girls, and in a good way, and that there's nothing wrong with that. Yes, we might experience our womanhood in a different way. There are women who care about makeup and who want to be delicate and feminine, and that's fine, just as it's fine for girls to not care about that sort of thing. But the idea that we weigh ourselves against other women and decide to step back and say, I'm not like her, that's where the problem is. So the idea of delivering diversity in an actual positive way is not about writing a single female character any particular way or portraying, I make an effort to include women in my ensemble casts that are ambitious and angry, like we talked about. I try to write those kinds of female traits, But I also try to put other women in the story who aren't like that at all, because that's what real life is. We shouldn't expect all women to carry certain traits. We should expect that we can find a woman who looks like us and feels like us, or like someone we know, or like women we love in literature. And the same is true for gender, sexuality, ethnicity, religion. Diversity is showing the world as it is, essentially. And so when that comes to gender, that means that there shouldn't if you're writing. Okay, so in terms of this person's paper, I don't know what they're taking from this. They have to write their own paper, so I'm not going to do that for them. But I definitely would say that as a writer, if you're trying to portray women as they really are, then you've got to have women, plural, in your book. And then another thing, this one was fun too. I think the lighting just got like significantly worse, and my dog is snoring, but it's kind of sweet. So I need your help. Also, I'm not going to write all of your English papers for you. I kind of want to, which is that's the problem, is that I want to. I'll do something about that. That's a me thing. Okay. I need your help. My English class focuses on deviant women, deviant as in straying from social norms, not necessarily evil or depraved. And for our third paper, we have to write our own short story whose main character is a deviant woman. Such a cool prompt. Yes, a very cool prompt. But I don't even know where to start. So I turn to you, and I'm going to read you this because it really did make my week. Writer of some of the most dynamic, badass, deviant female characters I've ever read. Thank you. That's an enormous compliment. But really, I'm just trying to write women that are like the women that I know. I mean, hopefully we all have women in our lives that we admire. That's the idea. That's why the Not Like Other Girls is so problematic, is because there are so many women to admire, that why should we try to stand apart from them when we could be a part of them? There's something beautiful about womanhood that I think we should collectively get on board with. And also, Fleabag has a really great thing about this. I don't know if you've watched it. Definitely, if you like my stuff, you'll like Fleabag for sure. But someone gives a speech about how women are born with pain built in. And it's just a very beautiful monologue that I will not give you right now because I am not an actor on Fleabag. Okay, how do you take fairy tales and myths and make them your own? The light is like really changing. Oh boy. Is that a little better? I don't know. We'll see. How to make fairy tales and myths your own is, yeah, I'm going to focus more on, let's take the idea that you want to write a deviant woman that's based on something you could grab from a fairy tale or myth. Fairy tales specifically are designed to teach you a moral. And usually the moral is that kindness and compassion win out over, envy, cruelty, any number of things. The idea is that being a good person is good, and that's why the good characters in fairy tales often win out. They tend to be very innocent. So there are, the princesses who've never done anything wrong, or oftentimes there's someone who has inadvertently offered help to someone who comes back and helps them later. It's always a youngest son. A youngest son, like, goes through the woods and saves some animals, and then the animals come back and save him. It's that kind of idea. That's this innate sense of goodness is often the female character in a fairy tale has that innate goodness. So one thing you could do with a fairy tale is just swap the genders, because the good, innocent, compassionate, virginal qualities that are assigned to the female protagonist, if you just give the woman a man's characteristics, almost certainly they're going to be a deviant woman. Deviating from social norms for womanhood, easy. The first thing you do, make them a man. Swap the princess and the knight and see if that changes things. Because the way that a man is expected to behave is obviously very different from how a woman is supposed to behave. So essentially, give your woman the question of, if she was not concerned with being feminine, if she wasn't concerned with fitting into what has already been the social constraints for women, what would she behave like? And so part one is a man. With mythology, definitely if you make Zeus or Apollo a woman, all of a sudden their behavior looks very different. It's perfectly fine when Zeus comes in as a shower of gold coins to have sex with someone in a tower. What if a woman did that? She would never do that, but that's That's not the point. This is why we're deviating. Okay, so the idea is swap the man and the woman in the story, and you almost certainly have a woman who is deviating. I mean, a woman who is being a knight is already deviating. So that's one option. And then your other option is there's probably already a deviant woman in the story. One thing that is almost always true about fairy tales and myths are anytime that a woman is acting against a man, she is already a deviant woman. There's a whole bunch. I think I said Medusa, Medea, Athena sometimes, Lilith, Baba Yaga, any of the classic witch characters. They're all viewed as villains because they are already deviating. So you could always take one of those female characters that's pre-existing and then fulfill her point of view, because obviously the protagonist in the story is just dependent on how the story is being told. So this is done all the time. Circe is another one. Circe by Madeline Miller, Wicked, about the Wicked Witch of the West. I wrote this down, so I should have this ready for me, but I don't. The Maleficent films. So you could occupy the female villain in the story and portray her as the protagonist, and then she is a deviant woman. But yeah, but now I think we're too bright. I don't know. So anyway, this is a really interesting concept that you could play with in a lot of different ways. Essentially, it's not that hard to make a woman who deviates from female social roles, because female roles are extremely well defined. It's pretty obvious how a woman is supposed to behave in any given situation. So you can take basically an AU of anything and just make her not be that concerned with being sweet or polite or holding her tongue or suppressing her temper. If she doesn't do those things, then she's already deviating. You should really read Seductress, because that is just full of deviant women, specifically deviant women who pursued their sexual desires, that's another thing, extremely deviant. And again, not in a corrupt way, just deviant as in it is not a social norm for a woman to have sex the way that a lot of these seductresses did. So La Petite Moor contains very much a deviant woman. Elizabeth Clavier is... and this is true of a lot of witch stories. She is a woman who hunts mortal men for sport. And obviously that's about as deviant as it gets in the criminal form. Okay, now this is too bright, I think. Nope. So that's about as deviant as it gets, as we know. I think a lot of people feel like they need to give a woman a reason to be deviant. Characters who try to get revenge, for example, usually they're abused or something horrifying has happened to them, and that's why they turn on social norms. And a lot of times this involves violence against women on screen. Or like in the story, a woman gets assaulted. This is a very common theme that I urge you to stay away from. It's kind of like my friend was just telling me about how he wanted to write this story about a woman who is a bounty hunter, who makes, her ethical decisions are just based on whether or not it's going to make her money. And I guess his boss was like, okay, well, why does she need money? Does she have a gambling debt? And he was like, no, she just has kids. She's the caretaker and she needs to pay her bills. And the guy was like, I don't buy that. And that's the kind of disconnect I'm talking about, is like, you want to stay away from having to do something super drastic in order to make her interesting or in order to give her a motive. Her motive can just be being a woman in the world. That's just my, I would encourage you to try to come up with plots that have women that are just being women versus being a woman who has to be destroyed first in order to come out of it more interesting. That's a whole other thing. I've just gone off on a whole. I was just thinking about it because it's very common in mythology and fairy tales that a woman can really only get what she wants, or she can only hunt for what she wants if something horrifying has been done to her first, which is kind of something I'd like to get away from. Elizabeth Clavier is one of the Casket Girls, which, again, I feel like I still want to give people some time to read it before I talk about it, but it's something we could talk about. It's just there's a lot of interesting stories about how women fit into the supernatural, especially like what I was saying about witches. Witches very often hunt men, or not all men, but the story is usually about like a man who has wronged them. And yeah, okay, now I'm just rambling. The point is, If she didn't care about being socially approved, then how would she behave? That's all it takes to be a deviant woman. It's not that hard to get up to deviance. So anyway, that is all for now, even though I've talked for a long time, so all is a tough thing to say. Oh, this is also really relevant to this month's spell read, which is The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula Le Guin. It is about a world where there are no genders. There's more to it than that, but, we just got here. Happy November. So anyway, what a mess this was. Please forgive me. This was a very difficult week. This has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing, and I'll see you next week.